Hello and welcome back to the fourth video of the CrypTool 2 development series. In this video I will show you how you can internationalize your component. As an example, I use the component that we developed in the last videos. In the last videos we developed an AffineCipher component that implements an AffineCipher in CrypTool 2. I also created a checklist that we use in this video. Step 1 on our checklist is to change the default namespace of our component. To change the namespace of your component, you right-click on the project, select Properties, and then here you change the default namespace to CrypTool, plugins, and the name of your component, in my case AffineCipher. In the next step, we have to create a new default resources file. To create a new resources file, you also right-click your component, Properties, and then you go to Resources, and then you click on this link here. This project does not contain a default resources file. Click here to create one. Visual Studio automatically created for us a new resources resx file and a resources designer CS file. The resources resx file is a key value store for resources containing names and values for our resources, and a file, the resources designer CS file, that contains the background logic, and you never have to touch it because it's automatically generated and automatically overwritten when you make any changes to the resources.resx file. So we just close it. In the third step, we have to references our newly created resources file in our component. In our component, we have to change the plugin info attribute, and we have to add a string at the beginning that links to our resources file. And this is CrypTool, plugins, AffineCipher, properties, resources. In step 4, we have to externalize all the strings in our component to the newly created resources file. We start with the plugin info attribute. Instead of writing AffineCipher as a name for our component, we write AffineCipher caption. And instead of writing the tooltip directly here, we write AffineCipher tooltip. In our resources file, we now enter what we just created. AffineCipher caption, AffineCipher, this is the name of our component, and AffineCipher tooltip, and this is the tooltip of our component. And we do this also for all input and output properties. So we write a caption, a tooltip, b caption, b tooltip, input caption, input tooltip, output caption, and output tooltip. And of course we have to add these also to our resources file. And you can copy-paste entries of the resources file. And besides internationalization of the name of the component and the input and output properties, you can also internationalize messages that your component sends to CrypTool 2. For instance, in the execution function, we have this message here. And we also want to translate this. So I copy it, create a new entry in our resources file that I name exception message. And instead of writing this string here, I write properties.resources.exception message. Okay, we now externalized all of our strings, so let's test these. After compiling CrypTool 2, I just started using F5. In CrypTool 2, I just create a new workspace and search for our component, AffineCipher. As we can see here, the externalization of the name and the tooltip worked. Same applies to all of our inputs and the output. The next step on our to-do list is now to create a new language resource file, for instance for German. To do so, I just copy the resources resx file using Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. Then I rename the file to resources.de.resx. Then you can open the file and translate everything. I will just translate it now and come back when I finish. I now translated everything in my resources file to German. Let's test it. So we build our component again and go to CrypTool 2. To test our translation in CrypTool 2, we have to change CrypTool 2's language to the language we want to test. To do so, we go to Settings, and in the settings, we just change to the language we want to test. In my case, it's German. And then we have to restart CrypTool 2. CrypTool 2 now started in German. Now I want to test if my component is translated. To do so, I click on Neu, which means new. Then I take the AffineCipher, which is in German AffineCipher, and drag and drop it to the workspace. And as you can see, the name and the tooltip is already translated. And same applies to all of the inputs and the output. We just finished step 6 of our list. It means the translation of all entries to the new language. And in the future, if you want to create new language for your component, you just have to repeat step 5 and step 6 for all the new languages. In our checklist, I also give you the link to a description for the internationalization, which also shows you how to internationalize your UI elements when you create UI elements with WPF. And this was all I want to show you in this video. Thank you very much for watching.